if we can have our panelists introduce themselves, we're going to start with Grace.
Hey everyone, my name is Grace Lee. I'm the program director of ReThink Disposable. It's a program, a waste reduction program of the nonprofit called Clean Water Fund, which is a national nonprofit. We've been around since the 70s. We helped write and push the Clean Water Act through. And we are still using grassroots engagement to make change for the public interest.
I'll go.
Okay.
My name is Arielle Fournier, and I'm in charge of community organizing and networking and recruitment. And Vanessa?
My name is Vanessa Pope, and I'm a ReThink Disposable associate. So I go door to door to restaurants to help them phase out disposable plastics and come up with alternatives for their serviceware.
Awesome. Thank you guys for being here. A few other quick introductions. I have mentioned Sharn, who's going to help facilitate. Also, Carol will be facilitating in the background as well. And then Sandra, if you want to take a quick moment to tell a little shameless plug for our club, Sustain East Bay.
Yeah, sure, of course. Hello, everyone. My name is Sandra Torres. I'm one of the officers for our Sustain East Bay Club. It's a student-run organization where we try to help with talks and activities, teaching students about how sustainability applies to any other field besides environment. So along with this event, we're trying to help students with how to cope with good habits, especially with trash consumption, and how it ties up to like climate change and so on. So we try to promote these type of events along with other activities such as a possible at-home cleanup, just so we can get students' gears going and how to treat themselves and the environment better.
Thank you. So without further ado, feel free to get your lunches. It is lunchtime. Feel free to eat. And we are going to start with Grace.
Cool. Let me share the screen and start the presentation. We made a few slides to share with everyone today. Right, so as we talked about before, we mentioned the ReThink Disposable program name a few times before. And so we'll spend today just talking a little bit about what the program does. And it's a zero packaging program, and also what we've learned about reusables during COVID. And wait, actually, hold on, you guys. Cora, can you eat your carrots outside, please? Thank you. What we've learned about reusables and COVID, and also just what individuals can do to drive change and make a positive impact in the world. So I wanted to start with just putting everything in context. I wanted to talk about specifically a coffee cup, and just to kind of think about how something as innocuous as a coffee cup and how it has, like, you know, it's linked to climate change, and how can something just so harmless as a cup to hold our morning coffee or tea be linked to such a crazy global crisis. So you can see here in this slide, in America, we use 120 billion disposable cups each year. That wraps around the planet 333 times. And it includes paper cups, the plastic cups, and also polystyrene cups. And we generate, just from, you know, the annual disposable cup habit in the US, that generates 2.2 billion pounds of solid waste. We use up 35 billion gallons of water, and that emits 4 billion pounds of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which is the equivalent of more than 350,000 cars on the road. And it uses up about even more than 11 million trees. And ever since COVID started, actually, the takeout food packaging has actually gone up 250%. So these numbers are even higher. So it's pretty crazy. So, you know, the problem lies in the fact that it's a linear system, right? So it goes from, okay, let's say a coffee cup. It's 90% paper and 10% plastic, right? So it starts from extraction of the oil to make the plastic, the growing and harvesting of the trees to make the paper for the cup. But then you move along in a linear fashion and you look at production, packing up the cups for shipping, then actually distributing everything, or like, you know, shipping of all of the cups, usually from overseas to the United States, and then into our hands. And then after that, you know, we use it for a few minutes and then we throw it away, and it needs to be hauled, sorted, and taken care of as in its kind of end of life management. So it's a very linear system, right? It's not doing this, which it's kind of crazy, but we're the only species on this planet that has trash. And so when I heard about that concept, it's like, oh man, why can't we make a better system? So we'll be talking about that a little bit more today, about what we can do to make a better system. And another crazy fact that is always kind of like in my head is that 80% of all the waste and energy that it takes to make that cup is all spent and made even before we as consumers touch that cup. So, you know, the numbers are just really out there. So what about recycling and composting? So why can't we just recycle the cups, right? Or why can't we just compost the cups? So, next slide. There really are no recommendations for a better disposable. So that's why ReThink Disposable is really asking people to rethink that concept of disposable and to really believe in the concept of reuse and reusable. So for recycling, let's say, sorry, Sandra, this is where the the smack talk happens about recycling. So we've been outsourcing our recycling to mostly China for decades. And about a couple of years ago, they instituted the National Sword Policy. And I think now it's changed to what they call it, the Blue Skies Policy. And so they finally said, stop. We don't want any of your trash because it's too contaminated with food, or it's just like it's too low of a quality. We can't do anything about it. So without a market like China to sell our recyclables, all of this stuff is just trash. So it's just getting sent to the landfill or it's being incinerated. So right now, though, we have, so like the number 1 plastic and number 2 plastics are still have like a minimal viable recycling market, but everything else is just being landfilled or incinerated in the US. And then also anything smaller than your hand is not getting recycled because through the sorting process, it just gets, you know, overlooked or it falls off the belts and such. And then with composting, unfortunately, there's a lot of greenwashing out there. So, you know, a very, very high percentage, I would even say 90% of the products out there, foodware specifically, that say that they are compostable are not breaking down in our municipal composting facilities. So it just doesn't get hot enough. We don't give it enough time. It degrades the organic quality, like the organic certification status of the compost. So a lot of the farmers are receiving the compost and there's still bits of stuff in it and foodware. So composting is not an option either. A lot of the stuff like corn, made from corn and made from potato, and I mean, who knows if this is real plastic or PLA on the screen here, but the PLA stuff, the stuff that's made from plants, it's also called polylactic acid. That stuff is not breaking down in our municipal composting facilities. So, and also, okay, and this stuff, the fiber molded bowls and takeout packaging that you see, it looks super like earth friendly, but unfortunately what is happening is that the stuff that's not lined with plastic, they put a chemical in it called perfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS. And they're a synthetic material that we've made, and it has the strongest molecular bond on the planet. So they made it really strong so that, let's say if there's soup in this bowl, it doesn't leak out through the paper and onto and burning our hands, but they made it so strong that it lasts forever. So these chemicals are also called forever chemicals, and they persist in our bodies and in the environment forever. And it's linked to a lot of really terrible health impacts, like cancer and endocrine disorders, kidney disease, and so forth. And it's also really, it messes with the development of the children's like reproductive systems. So it's pretty nasty stuff. So if you think about it though, if this is, properly sent, if it actually goes to the right place and it does get sent to the composting facility, it's breaking down and goes into the soil, where then we're growing more food out of the soil that's amended with this compost. So it's a really terrible cycle. So ReThink Disposable, we're like, oh my God, what do we do about this problem? It's a global waste crisis. How do we make the biggest impact? So back in 2012, we did a citywide survey in San Francisco of the litter. And we found that, and we picked through and categorized everything. And we found that 60% of street litter is comprised of single-use food and beverage packaging. So we started a program to stop waste before it starts, right? So we figured if we work with food and beverage businesses to stop their use of single-use disposables, then we will be able to eliminate that 67% of the trash that ends up in the litter and eventually flows into waterways and the ocean. So by working with restaurants, food businesses to do this switch here, this is an example from a place in San Anselmo. They have really amazing Chinese chicken salad, Chinese tofu salad too, but it's a to-go place. So you can buy all this food, but you can sit there and eat it. And they'll give you plastic utensils, a greenware PLA cup, and a paper plate. So we switched them. We're like, well, if people are eating here, we might as well just use real plates and real cups and stainless steel utensils. So they made the switch. And this business, and many businesses that have participated in our program, what we found is that there's a huge cost savings impact with this switch. So this business actually saves $14,000 a year by not having to constantly procure the disposable stuff that just gets thrown in the trash. And they're eliminating more than 288 pieces of single-use disposable items from the environment by going reusable. And in the context of COVID, it's scary, right? So are reusables safe? Aren't single-use disposables safer because no one else has used them? So the answer is that reusables are safe. In fact, they're safer than disposables. And the CDC has confirmed no cases from surface contact and does not suggest that disposable items are safer than reusables. So with reusables at a restaurant, you know where it's been, right? It's been sanitized and then it's brought to you at the table. The supply chain with a single-use disposable is just, you can't really track that, right? It's like, from production to shipping to unpacking to then, landing on your table, you have no idea where it's been. And then also just the fact that it saves small businesses money, which is something that is, that is really important right now, especially for our small food businesses. And it's a win-win, right, for the restaurant and then also for the environment. So just as individuals, I know that was all kind of dark and dismal, but as individuals, what we can do is that support restaurants that are using reusables still, that are still staying on course with that core value, and supporting them with our dollars, right? So consumers can drive change and make a really big impact. And for the restaurants that are not using reusables or still doing single use, use your voice. Tell them that you want them to do that and you think it's safe, because a lot of places are not using reusables right now because they're worried about customers being scared about COVID. So use your voice to tell them what you prefer, and that are reusables, and say no to single-use disposables. Okay, now I'm going to hand it off to Vanessa.
Hi, everybody. So I wanted to start with just a quick tour of MudLab. MudLab is a cafe that I run in Oakland. It's on Lake Merritt, and it's a 100% reusable cafe. So we ask guests to bring their own reusable mugs, and then we serve them using what's called a contactless pour. So there's the front door, and then when people come in, they sanitize their hands. And then we also have like a few other kinds of reuse systems in place. So we collect the Strauss milk jars, and so we return those to people. And then we have jars available if you wanted to like buy a jar to start your own zero waste pantry. So everything that we sell is in either reusable or 100%. Yeah, we have a couple chocolate bars in compostable packages. Ideally, we'd like to serve the chocolate in compostable as well, or in reusable as well, but it was like a little bit too difficult. So when people order at the cafe, they have an option. They can either buy or rent a jar, and then they bring it back for a small discount on their next purchase. But the County of Alameda has finally allowed businesses to take reusables again. So we're encouraging all customers to bring their reusables so that they can just go ahead and like fill directly into like a clean canteen or something like that. I'm gonna see if I can share my screen as well. Can I get a quick Zoom tutorial? How would I share?
Oh, you have to open up your Zoom window big, and then it's at the bottom, share screen.
Share screen. I don't think I have the capacity to share. Grace, would you mind just sharing yours again?
Yeah, sure. And I will try not to have that weird black box. I think that's the Zoom window. Okay, is that better, everyone? And then you want to go.
Yeah, I'll just quickly go through the MudLab slides.
Okay.
So MudLab was created in December 2019. So we helped Perch Coffee House go plastic free, and they got rid of all their disposable paper and plastic cups. And we actually moved into the former Perch Coffee House location in June. They went out of business during the pandemic because they decided to focus on other things. And so then they were able to turn the business over to us. And then for the next slide. So the problem is that grocery stores are a huge source of plastic, and so that's what we were kind of trying to get at with MudLab. Like, how do you operate a grocery store without all of these single-use plastics? If you think about it, I mean, it's just disheartening to go to the grocery store and see kind of what people are buying. Like if you look in the average grocery cart, it's just full of plastic that's going to be with us for hundreds of years. And then for the next slide, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, so similar to what Grace was talking about earlier, the problem with to-go food and convenience foods are that they just come in this packaging that's really hard to process, especially packaging that's soiled is really hard to even recycle. And a lot of the plastic that we see in to-go food and in grocery packaging is at the bottom end of the recyclability factor, so it's not even recyclable. So we were just asking, when we first started, we were actually called for Here Please back in pre-COVID, when you could sit down at a restaurant and and have a meal and not have anything in plastic. But now we're basically just MudLab. And then, yeah, so that's a picture of the store, the one that I just walked you through. We have refill stations, similar to this store in Berkeley called Feel Good. So you can refill your soaps and things like that. And we're actually just discussing a partnership with them so that you can get shampoo and dish soap and hand soap and just reuse your containers. And we've seen a lot of people come in and do that. And it is safe during COVID because we help people at the station to minimize the amount of people touching the stations. And then, yeah, so we're just working. One of the other things that we do that we find really useful is getting people out for trash cleanups at Lake Merritt. Because we found that like connecting people to where their trash is ending up is a really powerful way of getting people to permanently change their behavior. And yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone. I'm going to turn it over to Ariel now.
Hey. I should have elaborated in my intro. So in addition to Vanessa, I go out and recruit businesses to make these changes. And I also work with our parent organization, Clean Water Action, and we work on creating or gathering support for legislation and environmental protection. And going off of what Grace said about PFAS, so poly and perfluorinated alkyl substances, we have just been working on a bill called SB 1044, and that is to get PFAS out of firefighting foam, and that literally just got passed last week. Huge win. Yeah, and so that is one of the largest contaminators of our water. So it settles in our groundwater. It's affecting over 190 million Californians, and we've tested a lot of the water sources, and there's at least one or two of those variations. There's a bunch of different variations. A lot of them are not regulated. So yeah, it affects 190 million Californians, so huge win. But that's another reason why we don't want people using coffee cups that have that waterproof lining, because that is all going into your system. It's never going to leave your body. It's never going to leave the earth. So it makes our work even more important. And so yeah, and I've been in food service since I was 14. So I've seen just the enormous amount of waste that comes with the industry firsthand. So like Grace said, about 67% is street trash, and a lot of that is ending up in our storm drains and costing taxpayer dollars, and it ends up in the ocean, and it has devastating impacts on marine life. And so at this point, it's really just not enough for us to walk past a pile of garbage and say like, oh, that's too bad. You know, it's what are we doing? If we don't want to see that garbage, what are we doing in our everyday lives that will make sure that we're not contributing to that waste? And for some people, that may look like picking up trash or bringing your own reusable mug for coffee, or a takeout container, which if it's contactless is perfectly safe at this point. But the absolute best way, like Grace said, is to speak with our money, because money does talk, and businesses thrive on the consumer. And as consumers, we need to let these businesses know what we want or what we don't want, and put our money where our mouth is, so to speak, and not giving into the culture of convenience, because disposables are very convenient, and we don't have to bring that waste home with us. And because of COVID and that increase of 250%, we're bringing that stuff home with us. So we're actually seeing the level of waste that we're creating, and it's pretty sad. And so we should be supporting businesses like Mud Lab that are utilizing elimination and waste reduction practices, and not supporting the businesses or large corporations and polluters that are prioritizing profit over planet health. And it could look like you asking those businesses to make those changes to ensure your continued support. So, I mean, lovingly threatening them, saying like, if you don't make these changes, I'm out, you know? And so that's one of our jobs, is to make those changes for restaurants before consumers are backing out, so that they don't lose any business. And obviously the goal is to not bring as many disposables into your home, but if those items do find their way into your house, which it happens, but I grew up hearing the saying, one person's trash is another person's treasure. And obviously it wasn't as gender neutral as that, but because of this, I became a really passionate upcycler, and my specialty is taking everyday disposable items and just transforming them into something functional or creative.
Ariel, do you want me to share the screen now to show you pictures?
Yeah, I only put a few photos, but yeah. But yeah, so I often ask my friends to save their plastic takeout containers, the clear plastic ones, and I use those to create earrings or ornaments, and I often give those as gifts. And everybody loves a homemade gift, let's be honest. And I've saved hundreds of bottle caps or beer caps from the restaurants that I've worked at over the years. And I use those to make jewelry and fridge magnets, and I use recycled comic book images from my personal collection. And as a California wine snob, I have a whole bunch of wine bottles, and I use those, I cut those, and I create self-watering planters for my garden. So, and it's okay if you're not creative, not everybody is, but I'm really just sharing this to just have people look at their waste differently, and how can they make it functional. And that waste also includes food waste, right? So how can I make the most out of my veggie scraps? So something that I do regularly is freezing like my carrot peels or onion tops or garlic or even sweet potatoes sometimes. And I use that to, I boil it and I make a veggie stock, which I then use, so I'll strain that, and I use the pulp from that veggie stock, and I put that in my vermicompost bin. So yeah, so I use that for vermicomposting, and then I create nutritious soil from that, which I then use to plant my herbs, and I use those wine bottle planters to do that. And then I use those herb scraps, or I use those herbs, and then the scraps go back into my compost. So the cycle repeats. So it's going back to what Grace said about creating a system of circular reuse. So thinking about everything that you're bringing in, and how can I use this to its maximum before it's going to waste. So, and if you don't particularly like cooking or have a box of worms laying around, then donating those items to either schools or other artists or designers that can use those items. And I actually just donated some glass jars to Vanessa at Mud Lab, and I've been saving them for years, and I'm like, oh, perfect. So donating those items to other people that actually can put them to good use. And I grew up in a household that saved popsicle sticks in the summer. And we used those to build bridges or just different school projects. So thinking about those ways that you can help other industries save money that are utilizing those waste reduction practices. And also just supporting those artists and supporting the businesses that sell those recycled materials, because that's so important. So yeah, but just in summary, say no to plastic, BYOB, bag, not beer. And then put your money where your mouth is, not in your mouth, and then rethink your disposables. So, yeah.
Thank you guys so much. That was super informational. Yeah, that was great. So we are gonna move into our Q&A session now. So I'm gonna pass it over to Sharn.
Yeah, so if anybody has any questions, like feel free to ask them now. I did, like personally, I also had a question. You were saying that you went and donated some of your glass jars and gave them over to Vanessa Pope for her business. Is there a way like we could donate to, like, if you needed, like, I don't know, glass jars or anything like that? Like, are we allowed to do that?
Hand that over to Vanessa.
Yes, definitely. Bring us your jars, please. We ask that, well, our preference is for jars that are 12 or 16 ounce because that's what we serve our coffee drinks in. But any size jar is fine. We can use them for our bulk section. And then we just ask that they're clean and that they have a tight fitting lid.
Okay, got it. Ariel, do you have any like quick DIYs for us to share other than the jewelry that you were making, like easy stuff that beginners might be able to make with plastic waste and things like that?
Yeah, I wish I would have shared this image. Actually, Vanessa, do you have the image of the detergent bottle that I shared with you? Maybe you can share that. I don't have it on my computer, otherwise I would. But so one of my favorite things, and before I switched to like a waste-free alternative for detergent, was to take my plastic detergent bottle. Yeah, so I basically cut out the bottom of the detergent bottle, and then I just poked some holes in the sides, and then inverted it. I took like a hot needle, poked some holes in the lid so that it could drain, and just tied it with some ropes. And it's a great craft, but it makes super cute just planters for your plants. And then I took also a pair of pants that I was cutting up for another project, and I used the scraps from that to make her a cool little headband. Oh, kitty. But I but I used that to make her little headband. So yeah, just also I have so my roommate is a fashion designer through Alien 11, and a lot of this there's so much waste involved with the fashion industry. So a lot of the clothes that I'm not going to wear anymore, and if I'm not going to use it for a project, I'll give that to them so that they can use it in their projects. So that's another thing to consider also, is just shopping thrift so that you're not supporting fast fashion, but also donating clothes to artists and fashion designers as well, or using it in your arts and crafts, like I did with the bleach or the detergent bottle. Yeah.
I got another question in the chat here. I think, well, any of you can answer. It's, are there any current County of Alameda or other ordinances related to restricting or supporting reusables? I think Vanessa was talking about how I think they lifted those restrictions now.
Yeah, as long as an employee doesn't need to touch your reusable and your reusable doesn't contaminate any surfaces. So basically we just have like a stainless steel counter that we then disinfect a few times a day, and people put their cup on it, and then we do a contactless pour. And I've seen other businesses doing that as well. So that's kind of the solution. And then as Grace was saying, you know, there have been no confirmed cases of surface contact. COVID is largely a airborne shared virus. So it's relatively safe, you know, to use reusables. I think bulk sections are going to take longer to open back up just because there's so many people touching, and it just makes people nervous even though it is relatively safe, but we're hoping that those will open up in the, you know, in the next few months.
Yeah, and then we can also use our bags again at most stores. So there are a lot of places like Trader Joe's. There's like your packing station where you just put all your products back into the basket, and you can repack them yourself.
I know that sometimes the rules, there's another question. Sometimes the rules of recycling are really complicated. So is there like a good resource on your website to teach us like, what things we can compost or how to recycle at home? Like, because you're saying like sometimes plastic smaller than your hand can't be recycled or like, thrown in the trash. So is there, or do you have any resources?
I mean, right now, really, it's just number ones and number twos are recyclable. So if you see at the bottom, and sorry if this is just like, yeah, if everyone knows this already, but at the bottom of the product, right, there's the chasing arrows. Yeah, okay. And there's a lot of things that are made out of a composite. So like I was saying with the paper coffee cups, they're 90% paper, but then 10% plastic. So there's no way to recycle that because no one's going to spend the money to actually tear those two pieces of materials apart, and you can't compost it because it has the plastic is deemed as a contaminant. But in terms of resources, I mean, I guess just to keep it simple, just ones and twos are recyclable right now, and it really depends also where you live. Like it's different from city to city.
There's someone is asking what's going on with the situation about China and rejecting trash. I don't know if that.
Oh, like what's up with it? Like why did they start doing that?
Just to recap, they're asking us to recap.
I mean, a lot of it is because what we were sending to them was very contaminated. And the reality of the situation, and contaminated means like there was food on a bunch of stuff. Oh, thanks. Keep Oakland alive is a good site. Okay, cool. Yeah, so there's like food in it. Like people weren't rinsing out their recyclables and then putting in the recycling bin, or it was contaminated with things that just really couldn't be contaminated. I mean, couldn't be recycled. So with recycling, what happens is that every time you recycle it, it degrades the material. So you can never recycle into the same thing. You can only recycle into something that's of less value. And then when you see black plastic, that's the end of life for that plastic. So black plastic cannot be recycled into anything else. It's just trash. So with China, I mean, basically what was happening was that a lot of really marginalized people, children, women, the lowest, socioeconomic level were the ones that were sorting through all this trash. So that's kind of been the reality of the situation. And China finally said, forget it. We're not dealing with your first world problems. We have our own issues. So a lot of Southeast Asian countries are actually refusing to take our recyclables. And I also just read this crazy article about Interpol catching people that are illegally shipping plastics, right? And burning them. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So it's definitely a global waste crisis.
There's another question about like you were talking about wooden to-go-ware or bamboo or compostable like to-go-ware. So are the to-go like bowls and plates that are made of bamboo, or if they're wooden, are they safe? Are they safe to like compost, or are they also like, do they have chemicals mixed into them like you shared earlier?
So there are a couple of products out there that are single use that are safer during that consumption stage. So yeah, so bamboo, it's a pretty sustainable product, and birchwood. So if you go to some businesses, they have birchwood utensils, and those are, the safer bets. But again, it's still single use.
Yeah.
So you still have to like grow the tree and then chop it down and then make it into your product so that you can use it for a couple of minutes and then it goes into the compost system, right? So yeah, I mean, I carry a utensils kit in my purse. I even have a couple boba straws you can get really cool iridescent, like rainbow iridescent boba straws. So I carry those with me all the time, and reusable water bottle. So reuse is the best.
And
When we
Vanessa
shop for
sells
things,
zero waste boba, by the way. Sorry.
I'm sorry if you said it again. I completely cut you off.
Oh, no worries. Sorry. So Vanessa does sell zero waste boba at Mud Lab, which I haven't had boba in years because I refuse to have the plastic. So that's a really good option if you're looking for boba. But sorry, go ahead, Sharon.
Oh, I was gonna ask, are there like, can you give us some examples of like greenwashing labels that we should look out for and not believe and not be like, swayed by?
Yeah, greenware, like the clear plastic cup with the green stripe. Adrian, you're like, yes. Yeah, that one. Oh man. I mean, if it looks like plastic and it feels like plastic, on a molecular level, it is plastic. And so it's going to act just like plastic anywhere it goes. There's also the issue of marine degradability. What happens when it gets into the ocean? So microplastics is such a huge issue as well. Yeah, so greenware, that's a good one. The potato stuff, like that hard plastic utensils, they're like potato ware. And then the stuff made from corn, all of that. I mean, it says compostable like straight up on the utensil, but it's just not. It's crazy. If something is BPI certified, then it's more likely to be compostable in some places. That stands for I think it's like the Biodegradable Product Institute. So they certify compostability. But the issue is that in the lab, this stuff breaks down. But when you actually put it out in our municipal composting facilities, it's just not given enough heat and enough time for it to break down. So there's actually been a coalition of composting companies up and down the West Coast that have signed on to a letter and kind of like a collaborative movement to say that they don't want any foodware in compost because it really does degrade the quality of that compost. And then they can't sell it anymore. And if there's too much foodware in the compost, like what happened in the city of San Francisco, they'll lose their organic certification. The whole thing.
There's another question in the chat. They're asking, what are the best practices for trying to support local businesses and not buying plastic?
Ooh, that's a good one. For food businesses?
I think Ariel made a great point earlier, which is that the more squeaky wheels a restaurant has coming into it, the more they're going to be motivated to change. Like if 20 customers go into a business one day and say, but I brought my cup, you can do a contactless pour, then eventually they're going to get the message that that's what their customers want. And especially in the climate that we're in right now, like every customer that walks in the door of Mud Lab, for example, is like, oh my gosh, welcome. So, like, what can we do for you? Like, let's accommodate you because there's so few customers right now. So I think just being the squeaky wheel, just asking every time you go somewhere, asking if you can use your reusable, bringing it, telling them about the data, and then encouraging your friends to do the same thing so that businesses start to hear it consistently from consumers. And then, just doing a little bit of Googling when you're going to a place. Like obviously Starbucks is not a local business, and you can always choose a local business if you spend a little extra time.
Yeah, I love that answer, Vanessa. Yeah, definitely squeaky wheel.
Definitely. And I've actually walked out of after asking a cafe like, hey, can you use my reusable? And if they say no, I'll be like, okay. And if you leave, that says a lot. So if they're losing business by not utilizing that practice, they're gonna think twice about it. So it's massively effective. And I've also been in cafes that even if they will do a contactless pour for you, they'll pour it into a paper cup with that PFAS lining, and then they'll pour it into your reusable cup. So that just makes no sense to me. So I will, saying something to a business and being like, hey, can you maybe swap that out for something reusable in the future, so you're not wasting a paper cup every single time that I'm getting from you guys, even though I'm using my own cup. So just thinking about those small things and walking away if they won't do it. So yeah.
Yeah, and then people, oh, sorry, Sharon.
Real quick, how much money did you say businesses usually save on average? Was it 14,000 or 40,000 by switching to reusables?
No. So that was for that one really popular restaurant in San
Oh,
Anselmo.
okay, just the one. Okay.
Yeah. But typically, a restaurant that does do like a transition from single use to reusable, they'll save like on average between $5,000 to $7,000 a year, and that's an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
We've had businesses that have saved like 30,000, so it really depends on the scale, but there's definitely savings involved.
I was a bit curious your guys' take on like bamboo single-use items. Obviously, like the goal long term would to limit, if not completely get rid of single-use items, but there's like that in between. And also, there's always going to be the people claiming that for whatever reason they need to have a disposable for a specific thing. And with bamboo being much more sustainable than paper, what are you guys' thoughts on that?
Shoot, to be honest, I was reading the chats towards the end of each.
No worries.
Wait, okay, say it again. Sorry.
Basically, with the reality that there's always going to be some pushback, is like single-use bamboo items, like since it grows so fast, it kind of grows anywhere, and as long as they aren't putting those chemicals into it, so it doesn't really work so much for how they're using it with bowls and other things, but like utensils, and other things that they could use it for. Is that, I mean, obviously, like I said, if you want to be as like reusing as much as possible and not using disposables, but is that a valid kind of interim thing for while we're working towards eliminating single-use items?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, such a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
In terms of like disposable items that are best, bamboo is, I think, like my favorite or my kind of priority one. It's tough though. I've read articles saying though that, because they're all from China. I've tried to source them from the US. So you were never really sure what the like forest management techniques are, and also just monoculture for growing anything is no good. So, but yeah, it's like just takeout is not going anywhere, and we definitely need to do it. Actually, in the city of Alameda, Ariel and Vanessa have been really busy recruiting businesses for a company called Dispatch Goods. And so they're going to start doing delivery service for City of Alameda restaurants. And so how it works, and they're very popular in San Francisco already. But how it works is that you can order through the Dispatch website for certain restaurants that are participating in their program. And you get your food in a stainless steel container with a silicone lid. And then Dispatch staff, oh my God, Dispatch staff will come and like pick up your dirties like the next day or whenever, or the next week. So they're like, amazing pilot programs happening. Yeah.
That's super cool. So that brings us kind of sort of to the close. So if we've got any last questions anybody's got, we've got a few more minutes for questions. Anybody?
I mean, just at home too. I just want to make a shout out for some like products for home stuff. Um, I use beeswax and also silicone lids instead of saran wrap or foil. Um, I use these bags called stashers. If I'm not using my glass jars or Tupperware, glass Tupperware thingies, there's these, yeah. So yeah, instead of plastic bags, and they come in all different sizes and shapes. They're a little expensive, but you only have to buy a few of them and then you're good. You don't have to keep buying more and more Ziploc bags. Yeah, and I've been using bar shampoo and conditioner, which is awesome. And then you don't have the plastic bottles for your shampoo and conditioner. Um, and then for laundry detergent, I actually use a company called Drops. So, but do you have laundry detergent at Mud Lab, right?
Yeah, we carry drops.
Okay. Yeah. You also have soap nuts.
Oh yeah, we have soap nuts, and then we have a liquid laundry detergent that you can fill in your own container as well.
Yeah. Okay, that
Awesome.
was
Also, for those watching, the Office of Sustainability has been working hard on our zero waste swap video series. So we have one video out already, and a sneak hint for everybody else is we have another video in the works. We're hoping to make a bit of a series out of it just to educate people on different zero waste swaps that you can do for everyday things. So that brings me to my next point. We would love if you would follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all under the handle at Sustain East Bay, or just Sustain East Bay for YouTube and Facebook. Next Thursday during U Hour, we will be having a Sustain East Bay club meeting. There is in the chat, if we want to send that again, we have a link if you're interested about the club. Also, remember to fill in the sign-in sheet if you haven't. Thank you all so much. And if we could get a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you guys so much for joining us and educating us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this was super fun. Thank you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, bye.
Stay safe, everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your week.